What's going on, everybody? It's Jay Wilson. It's Easter Sunday. I apologize. It is now 9:11 Central Time for those that aren't aware of their own time. It is 10:11 Eastern Time, and I believe I'm 2 hours ahead of California, so California would be 7:11. What? So, Josh Cunningham, Big J Aquatics, Flynn's Fish Room, Sean Pierce. What up, Kyle's Fish Room. All right, so here's the deal. Since this is a dual live stream and we're going to be talking about ick, I just kind of wanted to give a quick update. Apologize again. Happy Easter. I hope you enjoyed time with your family. Keith, Chip, Mitch, Kevin Peterson, Surf and Turf. I just wanted to give you a quick update. Pinky's Filter, 10% off with the code NFUSA10. Check it out. That's awesome. And we've just lowered our prices on NorthFinUSA.com on pretty much every non-Northfin fish food product. You will find it very difficult to find a more expensive product than what we're carrying. So, for instance, Amazon, huge retailer. I'm pretty sure we best them. Sometimes maybe a penny, but other times dollars, and most of the time at least 45 cents, which is really, really great because it's a small business able to compete, not on the same level, but price-wise for certain things. So we're really excited about it. Last week we did this dual stream. I found it really fun. It was fascinating to see all of the people that popped up, and we were really excited. I wasn't seeing a lot of the comments on Facebook, but I was seeing a lot of the comments on YouTube, so that was really neat. Juan, Jason, Robin Reed, good quiet day, great Easter with family. That's what I like to hear. Remember, family first. This is fun. I enjoy it, but I was almost gonna cancel it just because of how late it was becoming, so I apologize for that, but at the same time my family does take precedence. Cichlid Guy 915, Quatron, Sin Chow, my brother. Alright, so here's the deal. First off, I want to state in this video that I am not a veterinarian. I am not an expert. Phoebus, what's up? Jeff Russell, Ray Weaver. I am not giving you complete end-all be-all information for you to utilize in your everyday fish keeping hobby. Looking for a Jolly Rancher green strain. See, this is what I'm talking about. All right, folks, so remember, always consult a veterinarian, always double check, and when somebody says this is the best way, I think what they're driving at is it is the best way for them because it is what has worked. Yo, not playing YouTube is working though. I can see perfectly. I'm getting a lot of stuff going on here. It says it's not playing for you, but I'm getting total live. YouTube's going crazy right now. So ick is white spot. White spot is ick. And there is a crazy scientific name that I'm not even going to give you because you'll never use it. But do not take what I say as bond, as the complete word, because there are so many different ways to do this, but I'm going to cover them, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper than what most do, because this, when you talk about anything, but everybody's saying it's fine, it's blank, I can't talk about it anymore on Facebook. Log out, log back in. I've got a good stream going on both sides, so I apologize, but we're also on YouTube. We're doing that for a specific reason. So when I talk about ick, I'm going to talk about all of the methods that I have heard of, that I have tried, what has worked for me, and what they say. And what I mean by they, I'm talking experts. I'm not talking myself or the fly-by-night fish keeper, or maybe somebody that's been in the hobby 20 years. You're going to find a lot of opinions, and that's okay. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to bring all of those opinions to one and show you that it's going to depend upon what you're keeping, how you're doing, and what is accessible to you. Somebody just made a perfect comment, like IFG says, this is a second opinion from a complete stranger online. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a complete stranger, but this is my opinion. Man, I purchased some fish. Okay, so let me dive right into this. Mindy, make you keep your Sunday Easter shirt on. Sure. No, I literally got out of the truck, grabbed all the stuff, fired this up, poured a Crown and Coke. Mindy said she would take care of the rest, but I decided to help out a little bit because it's not fair for her to do everything just so I can sit here. So I've taken care of what I got to take care of, and now I'm here to talk about ick. So, people will say, I got ick. I ordered fish from a reputable person and I got myself some ick, some white spot disease, and this is ludicrous. I didn't spend hard-earned money to get this salt doused on my fish, and now they may die. True. What I'm about to tell you may not be news to you, but it may be. Ick is one of the most prevalent issues known to fish. Keeping fish in general, they are very susceptible to it. It is very well known, very well spread, and pretty easy to treat if we don't overthink it. So just because you got ick on that fish you got from X breeder, I'll use, IFG doesn't sell fish, so I'll use him as an example. I bought fish from IFG, I got ick, therefore IFG sucks. That's not how it works. And here's the reason why. Did you know that, and like I said, this is, if I'm wrong, if I mispronounce something, don't crucify me. Somebody just said, is this religion about Satan? No. What I'm talking about is ick. So if I mispronounce something or I overstep, then please do not castrate me live, okay? I apologize in advance. So ick, your fish will come in contact with ick in its lifetime more than once. Maybe in your own tank. May have been from the pond that it was raised in. May have been in the lake that it lived. It may have been in transport from the source to the transshipper, to the wholesaler, to the retailer, to you. It's a lot of movement. So your fish will come in contact with ick, which is a pretty well-known protozoan. I'll get a little scientific, baby. It's very well known. It is around. It could very well be in your tank. So just because you received a fish from somebody that may have had ick, and then you introduced it into your tank, well, shame on you, sir, because you didn't follow the simple steps of quarantine. But I'll get to that in a second. So, in order to know how to treat ick, or maybe to understand fundamentally what ick is, maybe we should discuss it. And then we'll know exactly how possibly we're going to treat it, specifically to the tank that we have. Before I dive into that, now you know what, let's dive right into it. So ick it's a protozoan. I really don't know how it was incepted, but boom, it's there and it's prevalent in the ecosystem of fish keeping. Without fish, ick doesn't thrive. Does that make sense? Without fish, ick doesn't thrive. Eric, Ken Lee, I'm not sure where IFG is, but I was using IFG as an example because I talked to IFG and I know he doesn't sell fish. So, not it, ick. ICH, ICK, whatever the case is. So, without fish, ick does not exist. Thomas Medina, what's going on, my friend? All fish don't necessarily carry ick, but at some point, your fish will come in contact. And there's a reason your fish don't carry ick, okay? Ick has it's got more than 3 life, but it's got 3 major cycles of itself, okay? It has 3 cycles, and I actually have it written down so that I don't jack up the name for you. Yes, I am very confident ick exists in nature. Very confident in that. So, one of the stages of ick is trophozoite. Okay, trophozoite. This part of ick, this evolution of ick is the one that will mature on the fish. Okay? So the trophozoite goes, boop, gotcha. Then it starts to mature. Okay? Now, if we're in this stage while it's maturing, you ain't killing it. I don't care what you use, unless you use some sort of nuclear radiation, which I'm not going to recommend. You're not going to be able to treat ick in this state. Then it will go to a trophont, okay? So it will mature on the skin, and it's building a cell wall. So it's encapsulating itself on the fish, hence why it looks like salt. It's making itself a fortress so you cannot treat it. Yes, I don't care if you use malachite green, formalin, copper, if you use a salt method, a garlic method, a wizardry, if you skin a dragon and use its sweat. I do not care what you're using. You're not going to kill, not even heat will not kill ick in this state. Now, from the trophont, it continues to mature, and then it will leave the fish bursting. So like, I came in like a wrecking ball. So it's literally leaving but it's bursting. So it's leaving the fish, okay, and it's creating this tomite, okay. Tomites are the piece of the cycle that you need to attack. And I'm telling you, unless you have a microscope on your tank at all times, you're not going to know the cycle in which it's in unless you know exactly the moment and day that you notice trophonts, the actual salt, the encapsulation of said protozoan on your fish. So if you just witness the actual salt-like substance on your fish, you're not going to kill it that way, but you can time it for 4 days. Now hear me, okay? Because there's two different things. This is why there are so many different opinions and so many different ideas of how to treat this. I'm going to try to touch on them all so you can understand it. So when the tomite happens to do its thing, it is taken 4 days in a higher temperature water, 78 to 82. I'm giving you a variation. So African cichlid keepers, you have about a 4-day window when you are treating this protozoan, this issue, this prevalent, stupid, gonna happen at least some point in your career of fish keeping issue. You have 4 days. If you're keeping a species that lives in colder water, this sucker could take 2 weeks to do this. So the colder the water, the longer the cycle. Doesn't mean it does anything different. It just takes that much longer for all of the stages of ick to happen in colder water. So you're getting about 4 days in warm water and about 2 weeks in colder water. Please don't sing again. I'll do what I want. So you've got to think about this. You have to understand what type of fish you are keeping in order to treat this issue. Now remember, plants can also have this issue, and we're going to touch on that as well. I have G's in the building. He's getting pumped. He's getting ready. So now we know, and thanks, ick has a cycle. We know roughly how long it takes depending on the temperature of your tank. Now, I'm not talking about salt water because I honestly don't know how it happens in salt water, so I apologize to those salt people that I'm not able to touch on that right now. I didn't have enough time to research, and I didn't have enough people to contact veterinarians to kind of get this information. So now we've just hit the 3 cycles: trophozoite, trophont, and tomites. The trophozoite will mature on the fish, so it needs a fish or a plant of some sort to get its nutrients, okay? And then the trophont is kind of the mature self going, I'm leaving home, Mom. It's time for me to go and infect a crap ton of fish. Then it releases, blows itself apart, and creates tomites. The tomites will fall to the substrate, the fish will then come in contact with it, and now we have the constant cycle of ick. Does that make sense? So now that we understand it, we could talk about ways to combat it. Can I have your fish, please, and thank you? Sure. You've got a bunch of different people. And these are nobody in particular. This is just everyone. Okay, everyone. So I want you to kind of listen to this information, because I may say something and you're like, oh, that's what I do. But then I may say something a little bit further along and you're like, ah, crap, I keep those fish. This isn't going to work. Or it may not work, or it's not good for your fish. So you're going to get the people that go, I've been keeping fish for 67 years. I'm 54 years old, and I've been using heat to treat ick. Never once had an issue. So I recommend, if you want to kill ick, then you need to raise your heat. Okay. So let's talk about heat for a second. Because you're going to get the opposite sides, the science-backed sides going, I don't think so. If you raise your heat, your oxygen levels drop, therefore your fish are already stressed. So you're putting them under more stress, okay? Because the reduced oxygen levels makes it hard for it to go over their gills, and then they can't breathe. So what happens? They die. Don't raise your heat, you're mean. But wait a minute. We just had somebody tell us that they've been in the hobby for 67 years. They're 54 years old, and they've used nothing but heat, and it's worked. Mind blown. So here's the difference between practical application and understanding the surroundings than just reading science on a paper with a ton of parentheses, some hypotenuse, and a couple of little swigglies for us to figure out what is really happening. Are your fish colder water dwelling fish? Okay, well, if they are, then you're not going to want to raise the heat. Why? Because they lose more oxygen than, let's say, African cichlids. African cichlids in the aquarium hobby are living in about 78 to 82 degrees, right? Absolutely. So why not raise the temperature 4 degrees to 86 in hope to speed up the life cycle to kill said protozoan? Doesn't mean it's not the right way, and doesn't mean that you're going to stress the fish out that much more than what you're keeping. Does that make sense? It's like somebody telling you that they love cilantro, but other people can't have cilantro because it tastes like soap. Weird. What's good for one isn't good for the other. So you really have to understand that when somebody says ick and heat, it does work. I have used it, okay? But doesn't mean that raising the heat based on the science behind it and the lab coat and the numbers, because this is what I understand when I read that. Based upon the current evolution of the equation subtracted by the total atmospheric pressure, designed by the altitude that you lived in, minus the actual temperature that the fish lives in, gives you the exact temperature in which you can raise the heat to cause less stress on your fish so that you can treat it effectively with this next measure. What? But to somebody else, this works. To me, it doesn't. But what I do know is that it does reduce the oxygen in your tank. But if you have a crazy ton of filtration, surface agitations rocking, and you just raise your temperature 4 degrees, I'm not telling you that you should boil your fish. I'm telling you that if your fish are already warmer water living species, that you're not going to affect them any worse than what you've already affected them enough to get ick. If you have a colder dwelling fish, I don't recommend raising your temperature. So I'm not saying that raising your temperature is the absolute only way to cure ick. I'm telling you it is one effective way to work in helping you get rid of ick. So now we have to understand that ick is stupid because its life cycle is not very long. It really needs a fish to survive. So ultimately, now hear me, if you have a quality tank, and I'm talking about The whole thing has to be stable from pH to ammonia. Your nitrate levels can't be elevated. You better not be seeing any nitrite. Ammonia should be non-existent in that tank. Your temperature, your pH, and you haven't moved an infected fish in, then chances are the immune system of your fish is going to be strong enough based upon everything, repetitiveness, habitual nature of cleaning, proper food, all of this. If there is no swings in temperature, pH, nitrate, temp, all of it, if there is no swings in it and you're not constantly going, oh crap, I need to move this, I'm going to feed this. This is a new thing to feed. I'm going to do this. As long as you're not doing that, then your fish, chances are, will never actually show ick out in its true presence, and the ick will not affect them because their immune system and their stress levels will be so perfect that you're not going to see it. So when you tell me not to raise heat because it caused stress on your fish, you already had stressful fish somehow. Glass houses should never throw stones. Now this is everybody. This is me as well. I've had ick twice in my whole fish keeping career. I have had ick twice. It was very easy to get rid of, and I did it 2 different ways. And that's what we're going to get to, is all the ways. So now, yes, heat will work if it's good for your fish. And if your fish aren't already if your fish are in a bad state, please, please, please do not raise the temperature. So think, please think. At some point you will come in contact with ick. And Jared, the cilantro thing is real. So let me get to something else. Garlic. Well, I happened to be making a 15-course meal, and I was doing my thing, and I realized that garlic can help rid ick. So I chopped it up finely. I used my processor, and I sprinkled the garlic inside the tank, and guess what? No more ick. No more ick because I use garlic. Wait, what? So garlic is now the cure-all for ick. This is one method that I'm going to debunk, but I'm going to give credit. Garlic has never scientifically, applicationally, not a word, been proven to get rid of ick. What garlic does do is it helps build the fish's immune system. It does. Garlic will help develop the fish's immune system. It will help fight things, but it's only helping fight things by increasing their immune system. And if you already have ick, chances are the garlic, well, I shouldn't say chances, garlic is really not going to help you after the fact, okay? You're going to need to do something that's either going to kill the ick or kill the ick. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not saying don't use garlic. I'm saying it's never been proven legit other than hearsay. Heat's been proven, and some of these other methods are proven. And then I'll get with you probably the best course of action for everyone. So now I've got everybody talking about add a little lemon and bad boy's gonna taste amazing. I'm not condoning that. So there are so many different ways is what I'm going to continue getting at. So now you have the salt method. I have done so many different things, but when I hear somebody say they use salt, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. It kills fish. It's not good for fish. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I have loaches. I have scaleless fish. I have a knife fish. My fish has electrical current. I can't use salt. You can't. Isn't that what you just said? Doesn't mean somebody else can't. And I think that's the constant struggle in the hobby is There is different methods and different ways to do things that have worked for so many people. Salt very well will work in conjunction with heat, because salt is not going to kill the ick itself. Now you're going to see a ton of things. You'll see sodium chloride. Okay, got it. Salt, aquarium salt, API salt, your own salt, sea salt, whatever salt you want to use. But don't use it if you have scaleless fish, fish like a ghost fish, what is it, the ghost knife, because they're intolerant to it. I'm not sure shrimp, I don't know. But what I'm saying is, if your fish are already stressed, you might as well go to the medicated part. But if you're looking for a non-medicated route, salt and heat are effective as a team. I don't necessarily see salt effective alone, and I'll explain why, but I do see heat being effective in a sense on its own, for my sake. So the first time I ever had ick, I used salt and heat. Boom. Nothing came back. I didn't have it again. Awesome. So one person said, try just heat, didn't work, added salt, dead. So something else could have been causing it. I don't see just adding salt killing your fish unless your fish are not the type of fish that should have that amount of salt in itself. And I'm going to get to somebody saying Paragard is the best, because technically, even though I'm a huge believer in Paragard, it may not be the best. So, salt does, you'll see electrolytes. It's like, salt is Gatorade for your fish, huh? Thirst quencher. The ick died. Gotcha. So, salt does provide some stuff, and it helps aid in the development of slime coat. If the fish has a good, sufficient slime coat, ick is going to have a very, very tough time sucking on to society. I'm calling fish the society. So, yes, salt may help, but I don't think salt in general is ever going to kill ick in any life cycle. It's only going to help ick. It's only going to help that fish prevent that one cycle of ick. When it tries to attach itself, okay, it's got good enough slime coat, so what's the ick do? Ick only has 48 hours from the trophont phase to the tomite stage, the tomite stage to the actual trophozote stage to latch on. Otherwise, it dies because it needs a host. So technically, maybe it can help reduce, but I don't see it killing fish in general. So to clarify, when the tomites leave the trophont stage, and they're en route to the trophozoite stage to latch onto the fish, they have 48 hours in any case. It may be a little bit longer in colder temperatures, but I believe they have 48 hours before they can do this whole thing again. So you really, really have to pay attention and understand that salt may help in that case when it leaves the tomite stage to the trophozoite stage, but I mean, you're gambling in that sense. Somebody just asked if I can lower the light above me. I really can't. I apologize. I'm doing my best here. But I'll work on it next. So now we just talked about garlic. Nah. Immune system, yes. We talked about heat. Yeah, I think heat can work. Not for every fish, but it can work. Same thing with salt. It's not for every fish. So when somebody debunks that method, most of the time, you're looking at it as a sense of, what the heck, man? This guy told me I can use salt and heat, and this guy just gave me an 18-page scientific synopsis, hypothesis, thesis for his freaking triple master's degree in aquatic biology. Who do I believe? Help me. So, you're going to get varying stages. That's with anything in life. You have to look at the practical application and what you're keeping and how you're keeping it to see what works best. So, it's going to take a little bit of research on your side. Yeah, that sucks. You're going to have to research your fish if you're keeping said fish. And then I'm going to encompass this at the end of what you should be doing prior to all of this to prevent it. You should never be trying to take it out you should be preventing it from the get. Okay? Straight from jump, you should be protecting ick. You're protecting your fish from getting ick, not protecting ick. But you should never always be thinking about treating it, because that's not the way you should be living as a fish keeper. Reactiveness in the fish keeping hobby is going to cost you a crap ton of money, where proactiveness is going to cost you a heck of a lot less money in the long run and give you a lot more time and sanity back to enjoying your fish. So now, let's talk about medicated ways. Some people will say, well, before I get to medication, what if I just left my fish to be? No, because if the fish are stressed, ick is going to continue its cycle, and eventually your fish are going to die off, and the more fish that die off, the more stress that is caused, and pretty soon your whole tank has just been shredded, and forget it. You should have been treating it, okay? We should have been preventing it, not reactionary and just saying, well, forget it. I don't have time to go to the store. I mean, you spent money on the fish. You have time. Figure it out. Water changes, Dave, don't necessarily help with that. Because ick is in a cycle. If you don't get all of it out, they're still doing their thing. So you have to think about a protozoan and how it thrives. It needs the fish. You're doing a water change, but you're never removing the host. Okay, so you can water change all you want, but if you're doing said water change during a trophon or trophozoite stage, you ain't doing nothing. You're doing a lot more work. Okay, this is me telling you this, okay? I did consult with a friend that's a vet. I did a bunch of research on it. I looked at both angles, and I'm giving you as much as I can give you for you to make the best decision. So, there is sodium chloride in most lakes found around the world. I believe every body of water might have a little bit traces of sodium chloride. So, adding salt in the amounts that you would add them, I don't see having an adverse effect on the fish if the fish is tolerant. If your fish is not tolerant at all and you can trace this fish back, that's why I said almost every body of water will have some traces of sodium chloride, but some fish do not even come in contact, and they cannot take salt and heat very well, which will kill your fish. So although Stevie White, it may have been right on their part to say that, it may not be applicable to what you're doing. So now let's talk about the medicated route. This is probably going to tick off a lot of people. If you're seeing ick, so that would be its trophozoite, beginning of the trophon stage, right? You should probably medicate. More than likely, you should medicate, because there's too many varying situations with heat and salt, garlic, chives, onions, bacon. There's too many different variations, okay? So when you look at the readily available products on the market, you're going to find a ton of different information on what is the best. I sell some of these products, but I'm going to tell you, Paragard is not going to be the best. It may be the safest because of the levels of medication in Paragard. It may be beneficial to the select fish that you're treating. Because if your fish are already stressed, golly, it sucks. The fish are already almost gone, and you're going to give them a chemical. It's like trying to treat a severe disease in the last stage of its life with no known clinical success story. Some people may get it. What if I add Seachem salt routinely? You're just leaving the trace elements back in. You may be helping the fish get to the levels that it's good at. But we're gonna talk about all this later. So I'm gonna read some of these questions later. So Don Gray just said formalin for the win. Yes and no. So the best combination on the market is formalin and malachite green. Best single-handed combination to get rid of ick in its entirety, if you follow the directions, on the market. But there are some drawbacks to both. So you've got Paragard, formalin, malachite green, what is it? I may be saying this wrong, but methylene blue. You've got copper. Clout. When in doubt, clout. Do not use clout, please. Don't. Don't use it unless it's a last resort. It's a very harsh chemical. People will tell you, I've used clout every freaking time, and it's worked. Yeah, you're literally destroying the immune system of these fish. So let's get back to it. Malachite green and formalin are the best combination together, but malachite green can stain things. I've even seen somebody go ahead and use malachite green. It ain't been stained nothing. Get the heck out of here, man. Have you not seen clear or opaque silicone with malachite green party happening in that tank? What that stuff looks like? Or white rock, how it turns a tint of green? It happens. Doesn't happen to everybody, but it's going to be dependent on how much you're using and the longevity of which you're using it in. Formalin is fantastic on its own. It is single-handedly the best possible scenario for treating ick because it's probably the safest for a full spectrum of freshwater fish. But do not use old formalin. It will, I'm using the wrong term, but it will congeal. It will create a substance that will sit at the bottom and it will kill fish. It'll become toxic enough to kill fish. Not all fish, but fish. So, you must understand that formalin in its fastest, newest, purest form is going to be the safest possible bet, medication-wise, that you can use if you use it within its date and it's not old, it hasn't been sitting, and hopefully it's in a clear bottle so that you can see if the formalin is perfectly clear because it's a clear substance.
From IFG and John.
I'm so mad. I now have to pick this up, whoever gave this idea to her. IFG, get the Virgin Mary 420, please. I ain't tolerating that, and I hate that word. So, now let's talk about methylene blue. Methylene blue, although very effective, will also stain your tank. Yes. Methylene blue will also stain your tank. Shout out to those little things that flew in here. They did not get in my drink. So malachite green, formalin, malachite and formalin together. Get rid of Dylan Ingram too. Block them or whatever you can do. Those are going to be your best combo, or outside of that, formalin's going to be the best possible outcome. But there are many, many treatment variations. So kind of the key you have to understand is, how bad are my fish? Should I use said medication? Shoot. Is the holistic way going to be the best way? And does it work for my fish? That's what you should be asking yourself, because methylene blue, malachite green have the potential to stain your tank. It's not worth using it because you have it on hand and that's the easiest thing for you to use, but you don't want your tank to stain, so you're banking on it. That's something you have to figure out. Now, when I say Metroplex by Seachem, I've never used it. Here's the thing. You're going to have to treat the whole tank in order to get rid of ick. You cannot treat a fish. You cannot do these dips in these baths. You'll get somebody that'll be like, You know, about 37 years ago, I dipped this one fish in a treatment of metrodiazinol, and it worked flawlessly. Reintroduced the fish and didn't have ick. So I recommend you do the dip or the bath. No. Treating ick is not a singular fish type deal, okay? This isn't an internal parasite where you can attack that one fish and it won't possibly spread. With ick, if you've seen it, it's in your whole tank. Get rid of Kevin Smith, IFG. So you have to treat the whole tank. So this method of quarantining the fish in the beginning is perfect because you're leaving the ick in your quarantine tank. You're doing it by 14 days. You've just completely killed any chance of ick ever making it to your main tank. And now you've just prevented an issue that... Yeah. Gina Corno says, in 25 years, I've never had ick. Knock on wood. I would have to say that either one, that is a lie, or two, you may have never had ick, but the fish that you have at some point have come in contact with ick, and so they built a little bit of an immunity up, which is definitely backed by science. But if you keep a very, very clean and organized tank, you may never see it replicate itself or come back. So that is the key. Quarantine your fish when you get them. I don't care who you get them from. Quarantine your fish for a minimum of 14 days because if you have colder fish, the stress, the 14 days allows you to treat that one whole tank and boom, bang, you're done. So that it leads me to do not post one fish up on social media going, symptoms of ick, got him in the quarantine. You didn't do anything to help the situation. You literally took ick out of your main tank and moved ick to the quarantine tank, and now you're going to battle ick in both tanks. So the key is, without fish, ick does not survive. Without a host that it can thrive on, ick will not survive. So if you pull all of the fish out and treat that tank, once that tank is treated, then you can take said fish, as long as they're not showing signs in the quarantine tank or the other tank you moved them in, you've rid it, you've got this tank all squared away, which seems to be a lot of work, so I don't recommend this method. And then moving all of those fish back to normal, you just do way too much damage. It'll work possibly, but the stress and the movement and the stress on you is way higher than what it would be than if you just treated the whole dang tank. The whole dang tank. So, let's talk about everything now. Let's recap. We've got 15 minutes to recap. Ick. Can it be treated with salt? Yes, select fish, absolutely. Can it be treated with heat? Yes, with select fish, absolutely. Should I do the medicated route? That's up to you. If you want to take the time to use the unmedicated route, that's up to you. Typically, the unmedicated route will be the safest, depending on the fish, and you don't have to spend the extra money on said products to help with the medicated route. So, but what if I want to use medication? So a lot of medications are on the market will probably work. Formalin and malachite green are the best combination. Formalin is going to be the best solo absolute premier treatment as long as it's in a brand new state and has not created this matter that it develops itself in to sedate itself on the bottom and then kill your fish. You don't want that. I don't have a good source for formalin. I apologize. If somebody does, please post it. The other thing I want to talk about is, yes, heat can reduce, yes, heat reduces the amount of oxygen in your tank, but if your fish are already living in higher temperatures, it may not be such a bad thing. So make sure you're physically, mentally aware of those fish in their environment. Methylene blue works, copper works, general cure probably works. Garlic in itself doesn't work. I'm going to say it doesn't. That's me. I've used the salt method, I've used the heat method, and I've used the malachite green formalin combination. And the last time I had ick is when I did it, and it worked flawlessly. I actually treat it twice because sometimes you have to get through those 4 days in order to continue to treat one more time, because you may miss, it may not have had the potency. And you also have to understand the size of your tank to the dose that's on the back of the bottle. So don't ask anybody how you should dose your own tank. What you should be doing is following the manufacturer's recommendations for the amount of gallons or liters your tank is. Do not rely on somebody else to give you the math. I don't care who they are. I won't even give you anything when you ask. I will tell you, you need to go back to the bottle or package in order to get the exact recommendation for dosage for your tank. Salt will help with your slime coat. Electrolytes is something that's trying to catch on. Is it real? Yeah, probably. But I don't see it being a sole helper. So there are a ton of ways, the moral of the story goes, to treat ick. There's no one way to rid ick. And each person that keeps a different species that has been in the hobby as long as they are or as short as they are, depending on the resources they go to, will find that all of these will make sense to them at some point in treating ick. Doesn't mean that it's wrong, and doesn't mean that your 400-page thesis is the only way, because I'm telling you, although science is backed by fact, it is done in a very controlled environment, and not, to me, it is not 100% applicable in the actual physical environment of the regular, everyday fish keeper. Because here's the sad truth. Ick, and there's another disease that I have no idea how to pronounce, resembles ick. Okay? It will resemble ick, and it cannot be cured. There is nothing on the market that can be cured. And when I get the actual name, I'll post it in the Aquatic Lounge so you can see it, and I'll add it to the info on the YouTube video. But you cannot treat it. The only way you will be able to distinguish the difference between these two protozoans is on a molecular level through a microscope. And I'm telling you, 99% of you do not have a microscope capable of seeing the different protozoans to depict or decide based upon that. No, it's not Colmenares. You will not figure it out. There will be a very, very small portion that will ever know. And it will congregate itself just like you see ick on a fish, although it doesn't spread as fast, and it will kind of stay at the top of the fish and to the top of the head, where ick will travel onto the eyes, it will go to the gills, it's anywhere, it can be found anywhere on a fish. Okay? There's also, I'll touch on it real quick before I talk about how to prevent ick. There's also the term super ick. Okay? Super ick. The Elite Deluxe Edition. Yes, I am sure there is a strain of ick somewhere that is very, very resistant to treatment. Shoot, what I just talked about, once I give you the actual protozoan that I was talking about that resembles it, it could very well be that in some of the cases. And people are like, no, you're stupid, you make no sense to me, you only have 110 gallons, I have 3,000 gallons, do not tell me how to treat my fish. This is super deluxe ick, you hear me? So don't get it twisted, fool. You can't treat it. So how do we know it's not the other? Are we going by what you're saying because it looks like ick, but it's resistant to every treatment? Yet you told me that you don't raise your heat, but you've just told me that you used every single method. So then the confusion starts. Is there a strain of ick that is resistant to medication? Probably. We've got diseases as mammals that are resistant to medication, that have no known cure. It takes a lot of different things to help it. So, there are plenty of medications on the market from various brands. Big brands. I'm talking Cordon, API, C-Chem, and then there's these off brands that I've never heard of. There's Jungle from Walmart. There's Tetra. There are so many different treatments for ick. There are medicines for ick, and there are methods for ick. But there's really only a select few ways to prevent ick. And none of those could ever be argued with. Ever. You can argue heat, you can argue garlic, you can argue salt, you can argue a mixture of medications or a mixture of different treatments all at the same time. But you cannot argue the preventative ways to keep ick away from your fish, or better yet, out of your tanks. And here's some ways. And this is where I bring plants into play as well, because plants can actually host ick as well. I don't know how, I'm not going to get into that, but the number one way to make sure that you prevent ick from ever getting into your tank is to quarantine your plants and fish completely for 14 days. If you've got to treat. But for 14 days, you should be treating. If you're buying plants from somebody that keeps their plants with fish, then I will tell you this right now. If you do not quarantine those plants, you, my friend, are very wrong as a fish keeper, and you have just left your main tank susceptible to ick. If you can help it, buying plants from a non-fish inhabited tank is much better, but doesn't mean your plants are going to be better. It's better in the long run for the whole situation. So, make sure you quarantine your plants and make sure you quarantine your fish. Those are the number one things in my mind that we fail as everyday fish keepers to do, but they are so touted and recommended so liberally that nobody ever applies it. You get a select, they're like, I don't have room for a quarantine tank. You need to step off pushing the quarantine. I've been doing this. And then you set up a 55 gallon and you put in 75 fish. Yet I recall 2 months ago you didn't have room for a quarantine tank. So you have to put your priorities in place if you want to save your money and have longevity with these fish. And also, it's kind of sick in the head if you're just like, forget it. I don't even give two flipping hot dogs whether these fish come or go. I'm just here for the enjoyment. Okay. So you're losing money. Do you like your money? Oh, heck yeah, I love my money. I've been busting my butt for 47 and a half hours. Every week I rise and I hustle. So help yourself save the money. The other things you need to do is make sure that there are no major swings in your tank. Major swings. Major swings are pH swings, temperature swings, a swing in aggression, a non-stable tank overall. And you should be okay at reducing the stress. Light changes, environment changes. Somebody had just asked, do I quarantine my fish? Well, I just set up these 2 tanks, brand new. Here's the thing. A brand new tank bringing in a bunch of new fish, there's no reason to quarantine them because I'm bringing them all in at the same time. They're going to be stressed no matter what. There's no reason for me to have a quarantine tank since technically the new tank could host as a quarantine tank and I could treat that tank and then not have to worry about ick ever entering or being entered unless I don't quarantine a new fish. Make sense? So, no, I did not quarantine these 2 brand new tanks, the A-Round Nature tank and the 150 Trophies tank with gobies. The other thing you need to also pay attention to, which is going to kind of almost bring us to a close. When we are changing diets, atmosphere, we are constantly meddling in our tank. We cause a lot of this stress ourselves. And stress is the number one thing that will break down an immune system in probably almost every single living creature. I should say mammal. Let's say mammal. In any mammal known. So if your stress is high, your immune system drops. When your immune system drops, it latches onto said fish. So the goal is to always make sure that you have the least stressful fish. Well, how do I know that? Because you're telling me that I need to do all these things, but my fish, when I look at them in the tank, you're telling me that they're stressed, but I see happy, vibrant fish. Yes, that's what you see. Based upon the information you gave me, I don't visually see that. Fish keeping has one face, even dead. And the only way you know they're dead is when they're literally not moving their gills, upside down, getting washed in the current, no sign of life. That's the only other state of a fish that I know outside of. So you have to understand. Well, no, you told me thriving is what you want to see from my tank. But you're not making sense to me when you talk like that. Well, do you, buddy? So you have to just really think about it full spectrum wise. And every time you see somebody come to the plate with an issue, they never give you 100% of the details for a few reasons. Either they forgot, they're embarrassed, they don't think it's pertinent, or they really are just trying to see an answer that may help them, and they're going to try that next. So anytime you do bring something to the table, bring 100% of the issues, bring your water parameters, bring pictures of your fish, all to the table visually, so everyone can see what's going on. So, if you are purchasing fish from a place that does a great job at quarantining their fish, or holds them for a period of time, although very well you are impatient, it's better for you and it's better for the fish because it's less stress. Think about the movement of a wild-caught fish in the worst possible measure. It gets extracted possibly from the lake. It moves to the holding point. They got their hands metal. They net them. They put them in vats. They bag them up. They send them to the airport. They get on the airport. They get to the wholesaler or the next transshipper, and the transshipper's messing around with them, hopefully. Or they leave them in the bag, and they're trying to keep the temperature good, and then they move them to the wholesaler or the retailer, and then let's say the retailer does not hold them, and then you pick them up, and you immediately put them in your tank. Holy crap, as a human being, boarding a flight from one location, hitting a layover, not eating food, not getting sleep, not drinking enough fluids, and you have nothing but the last bit of reserve energy you have when you arrive at your destination. Do you either collapse, or do you feel yourself so drained that you almost feel sick? Because that's the way a fish would feel after all of that. So that's why quarantining is very important. It is the number one preventative measure for keeping pretty much anything out of your tank in most cases. Not everything is going to be completely 100% true. Nothing in the hobby is 100% except me sitting in front of you telling you that nothing is 100% true. And I don't care about the fly-by-nights or the bandwagoners or whatever the case is to push a product, to get something out there, because everything I just told you, I told you Paragard may be the safest, but it's not the best. Outside of that, I don't carry any of that stuff. So you have to look at the information being given to you so you can gain knowledge, so you are more valuable as a fish keeper. to yourself. Because what I mean by more valuable is you will retain more of your own money, making you more valuable. So ick, super ick, super deluxe, stage 3 ick. Another disease that I will, a protozoan that I will give you later, I'll give you the scientific name. That as well can be treated in a multitude of ways. A multitude of ways. No one way is true and no one way is false except just giving garlic or leaving your fish to fend for themselves in an ick-riddled environment. Ick, yes, while probably in the wild, isn't as widespread because, as somebody said, which I believe was Chip Mason said, it's a controlled environment. It's a smaller environment. It spreads faster, and we're almost harboring this perfect environment for diseases to spread. Nobody wants to lose a fish, let alone 30, 40, 50, 60, 100. Nobody wants to do that. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes there's mass outbreaks and things could hurt. But if you start to understand that quarantining, keeping a stable environment, making sure there's no huge swings in any of the said achievable numbers on a card based upon a vial shake, which is never going to be 100% as well, as long as you're keeping your tank stable, you're paying attention to those fish and any adverse signs from anything you do, you're quarantining, you're getting from a reputable place, you're quarantining those plants as well, and you have necessary medications to treat a few of the major issues, you are not going to be the person that gets an issue, freaks out, collapses. You are going to be the person that goes, you know what? I got the knowledge. I've got a wide variety of different ways. This is the way I know to be true. I have this medication or I have this supply. This is what I'm going to go for. And you go for it and you treat your tank. And it turns out that you reacted in a very sane and logical manner instead of freaking yourself out with 300 different Facebook pages or Google pages and listening to 8 different contradicting people, fish keepers. You will feel much better about treating not only ick, but other things that should arise in your tank or attack your fish. Like I said before, garlic can help with your immune system of your fish, but it does not cure ick in itself. Formalin, malachite green, methylene blue, metro, copper. There's a ton of medications. Rid ick, no ick, kaboom ick. I don't know. There's a ton out there. I can't name them all. The key is don't flip a switch. Be calm, cool, and collected. Do what you know to do. Do what works for you, because what works for you is the best method as long as you're not murking fish left and right. So if it's worked in the past for you and you're keeping those fish that it works for, then do exactly what you do, because that is probably the best way. We can only give you recommendations on YouTube. We can only give you recommendations on Facebook in the Aquatic Lounge, and there will always be a ton of different methods. So folks, thank you for taking time out on your Easter Sunday away from your family. It truly means a lot. If you're on YouTube, subscribe these folks. You got KG Cichlids, Inquisitive Fish Guy, Aquaticy. That's what I'm seeing right now. That's why I'm mentioning them. Facebook, do your thing. Evo Living, you're welcome. Sub. Go crazy. Help these people continue making good contact. Regina Shake. I don't sound like Caesar Milan. I do my thing because I enjoy it and I'm having a good time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I enjoy what is happening. I don't even care if trolls come in because, well, clearly their brain is about as big as a mustard seed. And, oh well. You freaking idiots. All right, folks, enjoy the rest of your evening. Get it poppin'. More confetti. Maximus Aquatics. Subscribe. You know what's next. 1, 2, 3. Holla. Now I've got to hit finish on all these.